Chain reaction. In a secure facility somewhere in Central Asia, a scientist copies files onto a device smaller than a thumbnail. The files contain specifications that took decades and billions of dollars to develop. Centrifuge designs, enrichment protocols, warhead configurations, everything a rogue nation needs to build a nuclear weapon. In 3 weeks, those files will be sold to buyers who have spent years trying to acquire this knowledge. And once the transfer is complete, the world will become immeasurably more dangerous. This is not a theoretical scenario. This is what Secret Elite discovered was happening across 9 countries simultaneously. This is Operation Atomic Shadow, the story of how an international coalition stopped the largest nuclear proliferation conspiracy in history and prevented technology capable of destroying cities from reaching those who would use it. The investigation began with a death that should have been unremarkable. A retired nuclear physicist was found dead in his apartment in a European capital. The official cause was heart failure. He was 73 years old with a history of cardiac problems. There was no reason to suspect anything unusual. But an intelligence analyst reviewing routine mortality reports noticed something odd. The physicist had worked on classified nuclear programs for 3 decades. His retirement had been abrupt and unexplained, and in the months before his death, he had made multiple trips to countries not typically associated with scientific conferences. A deeper investigation revealed that the physicist's bank accounts showed deposits totaling over $2 million from untraceable sources. His computer contained encrypted files that forensic analysts could not access, and his travel records showed meetings with individuals connected to nuclear programs in nations seeking weapons capability. The physicist had been selling secrets, and someone had silenced him before he could be discovered. Secret Elite activated a comprehensive investigation within 48 hours. What they discovered was terrifying. The dead physicist was not operating alone. He was part of a network that had been systematically extracting nuclear weapons technology from facilities across multiple countries for over 7 years. The network included scientists, engineers, security personnel, and intelligence operatives who had been recruited through ideology, blackmail, or simple greed. They called themselves the Prometheans, after the mythological figure who gave fire to humanity. They believed they were democratizing nuclear technology, breaking the monopoly held by established nuclear powers. They saw themselves as liberators, not traitors. The buyers saw them as useful tools. The network had already transferred significant nuclear technology to 3 nations actively pursuing weapons programs. Centrifuge designs that took decades to develop were now being manufactured in underground facilities. Enrichment protocols that required years of research were being implemented by technicians who had never conducted original experiments. The nuclear club was about to expand dramatically, and the network was preparing its most significant transfer yet. Intelligence revealed that the Prometheans had acquired comprehensive warhead design specifications from a facility in Central Asia. The specifications included everything needed to construct a functional nuclear weapon: dimensions, materials, assembly sequences, and yield calculations. The files represented the culmination of decades of weapons development. The buyers were representatives of a nation that had publicly abandoned its nuclear weapons program, but secretly continued development. They had the enriched material. They had the delivery systems. They only lacked the final technical knowledge to assemble a working weapon. In 3 weeks, they would have it. Think about what this means. Nuclear weapons are the most destructive force humanity has ever created. A single device can kill hundreds of thousands of people instantly. The radiation effects can render areas uninhabitable for decades. The threat of nuclear war has shaped international relations for 80 years. The barriers to nuclear weapons development exist for reasons. They buy time for diplomacy. They create opportunities for intervention. They prevent the uncontrolled spread of apocalyptic capability. The Prometheans were systematically destroying those barriers. Secret Elite assembled the most sensitive task force in its history. Representatives from 11 nations gathered at a facility so classified that most governments denied its existence. Nuclear security specialists, counterintelligence experts, technical analysts, and diplomatic liaisons confronted a threat that could reshape global security for generations. The scope of the network was staggering. In Russia, compromised scientists at 3 separate facilities had provided centrifuge technology over a 5-year period. They had been recruited through a combination of ideological manipulation and financial inducement. Several believed they were helping developing nations achieve energy independence. Others simply wanted money. In the United States, a security contractor had provided access protocols and vulnerability assessments for nuclear facilities. He had been blackmailed after a foreign intelligence service documented his financial difficulties and extramarital relationships. He believed he was providing information to prevent terrorist attacks. He was enabling state-level proliferation. In France, an engineer had stolen reactor designs that could be adapted for weapons-grade plutonium production. She had been radicalized through online communities that framed nuclear monopoly as colonial oppression. She believed she was fighting for global justice. She was enabling potential genocide. In Pakistan, a former weapons scientist had served as technical consultant, helping buyers interpret and implement stolen specifications. He had connections to previous proliferation networks that had never been fully dismantled. He was motivated purely by profit. In Israel, a signals intelligence specialist had provided communication security protocols that allowed the network to operate undetected. He had been recruited through a false flag operation that convinced him he was helping an allied intelligence service. He had no idea his information was enabling nuclear proliferation. The network spanned 9 countries. It included 43 identified members. It had operated for 7 years without detection, and it was 72 hours from completing a transfer that could not be reversed. At the center of the network stood a figure known only as the Professor, a former nuclear physicist who had worked in weapons programs for 2 nations before disappearing. He had built the Prometheans over 15 years. He recruited members personally, appealing to their grievances, their ideologies, or their weaknesses. He maintained compartmentalized communication that prevented any single member from compromising the entire network. He had evaded intelligence services that had been hunting him for a decade. The Professor genuinely believed he was making the world safer. His logic was perverse but internally consistent. If every nation had nuclear weapons, no nation would use them. Mutual assured destruction would become truly mutual. The great powers would lose their ability to coerce smaller nations. He did not consider that some of his buyers wanted nuclear weapons not for deterrence but for use. Secret Elite faced unprecedented operational challenges. The network members were distributed across 9 countries with different legal systems, intelligence relationships, and political considerations. Arrests in one country could alert members in others. The technology that had already been transferred could not be recovered. And the upcoming transfer was scheduled to occur in a location with minimal intelligence coverage. The task force developed a synchronized global operation. Every identified network member would be arrested simultaneously. Every known cache of stolen technology would be seized. Every communication channel would be disrupted. The operation required precision timing across 9 time zones with 0 margin for error. Intelligence teams spent 14 days refining target packages. In Moscow, 3 scientists were identified at separate facilities. Surveillance confirmed their routines, their security arrangements, and their communication patterns. Evidence collection teams prepared to seize computers, documents, and storage devices that would prove the full scope of their activities. In Washington, the security contractor was under continuous surveillance. His handlers had scheduled a meeting to prepare for the upcoming transfer. The meeting location would provide an opportunity for arrest and evidence collection. In Paris, the engineer had become suspicious after the physicist's death. She had implemented additional security measures and reduced her digital footprint. Surveillance teams adapted their approach to maintain coverage without alerting her. In Islamabad, the former weapons scientist operated with protection from elements within the security services. His arrest would require coordination at the highest diplomatic levels and operational approaches that could not be attributed to foreign services. In Tel Aviv, the signals specialist had begun to suspect he had been deceived. Intercepts showed him researching the organizations he believed he was helping. He might attempt to warn others or destroy evidence. His arrest required immediate action. The most critical target was the professor himself. Intelligence placed him in a Central Asian nation with limited cooperation with international law enforcement. He was meeting with representatives of the buyer nation to finalize the warhead specifications transfer. The meeting location was a private compound with substantial security. Secret Elite coordinated with national authorities for an unprecedented intervention. Diplomatic pressure secured grudging cooperation. Special operations teams were positioned for immediate action. The window for intervention was measured in hours. 5 days before the scheduled transfer, Secret Elite received final confirmation. All operational elements were in position. Over 1,500 personnel across 11 countries stood ready. Evidence collection teams had prepared for immediate seizure of materials. Medical and psychological support teams were available for detained individuals who might provide cooperation. The operation was scheduled for execution in 36 hours. Then signals intelligence detected a critical development. The professor had accelerated the timeline. He had detected surveillance activity in 2 countries and correctly assessed that his network was compromised. The transfer would occur in 12 hours, not 5 days. Representatives were already traveling to the meeting location. Secret Elite had less than half a day to execute an operation planned for over 2 weeks. What happened next demonstrated why international cooperation on nuclear security matters more than any other form of collaboration. Within 3 hours, all 11 operational commands confirmed readiness for immediate execution. The compressed timeline created enormous risks. Teams that had planned careful approaches would need to improvise. Evidence that might have been collected methodically might be lost. But the alternative was worse. If the transfer occurred, a hostile nation would possess nuclear weapons capability. The regional balance would shift catastrophically. The threat of nuclear war would increase dramatically. Millions of lives would hang in the balance. At exactly 600 hours Greenwich Mean Time, Secret Elite launched Operation Atomic Shadow. The operation began with the communications disruption. Specialized cyber teams simultaneously attacked every known communication channel used by the Prometheans. Encrypted messaging platforms were compromised. Satellite phone networks were jammed. Even backup communication methods identified through signals intelligence were disrupted. The network was blinded and silenced before the first arrest occurred. In Moscow, special units coordinated with Russian security services moved on 3 locations simultaneously. The first scientist was arrested at his home before dawn. His computer contained encrypted files that technical teams began decrypting immediately. The encryption keys were found in a hidden compartment in his desk, placed there because he did not trust his own memory. The second scientist was arrested at his laboratory. He attempted to destroy documents but was restrained before he could complete the action. The documents contained handwritten notes detailing every technology transfer he had facilitated over 5 years. The third scientist had been warned by an unknown source and attempted to flee. Security services intercepted him at a train station. He was carrying a device containing specifications for advanced centrifuge designs, apparently planning to sell one final cache of secrets before disappearing. In Washington, the security contractor was arrested during his scheduled meeting. The meeting had been arranged by Secret Elite through a controlled asset posing as a network coordinator. The contractor arrived expecting to receive instructions for the upcoming transfer. Instead, he was met by federal agents who had been monitoring the meeting location. His confession came within hours. He provided details about his recruitment, his handlers, and the information he had provided over 3 years. His cooperation would help identify additional security vulnerabilities that had been exploited. In Paris, the engineer presented the most challenging arrest. She had implemented sophisticated surveillance detection routines. She had prepared escape routes. She had arranged for evidence destruction if she failed to check in at specified intervals. French security services executed a rapid intervention that bypassed her security measures. She was arrested in her vehicle before she could reach a safe location. Her apartment was secured before automated destruction systems could activate. The evidence recovered was extraordinary. She had documented every transfer she had facilitated, apparently planning to write a memoir justifying her actions. The documentation provided comprehensive evidence of the network's European operations. In Islamabad, the operation required exceptional diplomatic coordination. Pakistani authorities were informed of the operation only hours before execution. The former weapons scientist had protection from powerful figures who valued his expertise. His arrest required guarantees at the highest levels that Pakistan's nuclear security would not be publicly questioned. The arrest occurred without incident. The scientist expressed no surprise. He had expected this day would eventually come. He provided immediate cooperation in exchange for considerations that remained classified. His testimony revealed connections to other proliferation networks that had been thought dismantled. The intelligence would enable future operations that would continue for years. In Tel Aviv, the signal specialist was arrested at his home. He initially denied all knowledge of the Prometheans. When shown evidence of his communications with the network, he broke down completely. He had genuinely believed he was helping an allied service. The realization that he had enabled nuclear proliferation destroyed him psychologically. His cooperation was total. He provided every detail of his recruitment, his tasking, and his communications. His information helped decrypt messages that had resisted analysis. Simultaneous operations executed across 6 additional countries where network members had been identified. In Germany, a financial facilitator who had laundered payments was arrested. In the United Kingdom, a document forger who had created false credentials was seized. In Switzerland, a banker who had maintained accounts was detained. In China, coordination with local services enabled the arrest of a technical consultant. In India, a former official who had provided access was taken into custody. In South Africa, a logistics coordinator who had arranged transportation was arrested. By midday, 41 of 43 identified network members were in custody. But the most critical target remained. The professor and the buyer representatives were at the compound in Central Asia. The transfer meeting was scheduled to occur within hours. Local authorities had been cooperative, but their operational capabilities were limited. Secret Elite coordinated an intervention that operated at the edge of international law. Special operations teams from 3 nations approached the compound through difficult terrain. They had been pre-positioned during the planning phase. The compressed timeline had actually improved operational security by eliminating opportunities for local authorities to warn the target. The compound was protected by private security personnel with military training. Satellite surveillance indicated approximately 20 armed individuals. The professor and 4 representatives from the buyer nation were inside the main building. At precisely 1400 hours local time, the assault began. Electronic warfare disabled the compound's communication and surveillance systems. Snipers eliminated exterior guard positions. Assault teams breached the perimeter from 3 directions simultaneously. The firefight lasted 11 minutes. All hostile security personnel were neutralized. 3 team members sustained injuries, none life-threatening. The professor was found in an underground room attempting to destroy the storage device containing the warhead specifications. He had managed to damage the device but not completely destroy it. Technical teams would later recover approximately 80% of the data, enough to understand exactly what had been stolen and what might have been transferred previously. The buyer representatives were taken into custody. Their arrest created diplomatic complications that remain classified. Their interrogation revealed the full scope of their nation's covert nuclear weapons program. The professor himself refused to cooperate. He maintained that his actions were justified. He argued that nuclear monopoly was immoral. He claimed history would vindicate him. He was wrong. Consider what was prevented. A hostile nation did not receive warhead specifications that would have enabled nuclear weapons production. The regional balance of power was not disrupted. The threat of nuclear conflict was not increased. The technology that had already been transferred was identified and characterized. Counter-proliferation efforts were able to focus on specific capabilities. Monitoring systems were adjusted to detect implementation. 43 individuals who had compromised nuclear security were removed from positions where they could cause further damage. Security protocols at facilities in 9 countries were reviewed and strengthened. The network's financial infrastructure was dismantled. Over $300 million in assets were frozen or seized. The accounts revealed connections to other illicit networks that would be targeted in future operations. But the most significant impact was invisible. Nations considering nuclear weapons programs observed what happened to those who tried to bypass established barriers. They understood that the international community would act decisively against proliferation. The calculus of pursuing nuclear weapons shifted. In the years following Operation Atomic Shadow, several nations quietly abandoned covert weapons programs. They calculated that the risks of detection and intervention exceeded the benefits of nuclear capability. The operation had created deterrence against proliferation itself. This is the deepest impact of secret elite operations, not just stopping immediate threats, but shaping the strategic calculations that determine whether threats emerge at all. The professor now faces prosecution at the International Criminal Court. The charges include trafficking in nuclear materials, conspiracy to commit crimes against peace, and violations of international non-proliferation treaties. The evidence is overwhelming. His own documentation proves his activities. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. His network is destroyed. His legacy is failure. Secret Elite operates in shadows so that others can live in light. The families and cities that will not be vaporized by nuclear weapons will never know how close they came to danger. The children who will grow up in a world without additional nuclear-armed states will never know about the conspiracy that nearly succeeded. The future generations, who will inherit a world where nuclear war remains unlikely, will never know about the operation that preserved their chances. This is the nature of Secret Elite operations. Success is measured in weapons that are not built, in wars that do not occur, in cities that continue to exist, in futures that remain possible. The nuclear threat has not been eliminated. Other networks will emerge. Other attempts will be made. The work of preventing proliferation never ends. But on this day, the line held. The barriers remained intact. The world became no more dangerous than it was. And somewhere, a child plays in a city that remains standing. She does not think about nuclear weapons. She does not know about warhead specifications or centrifuge designs or enrichment protocols. She simply lives her life, trusting that the world will continue to exist. That trust exists because people she will never know risked everything to preserve it. How many operations like this happen without public knowledge? How many nuclear threats have been neutralized before they could materialize? Should Secret Elite have expanded authority to prevent proliferation before networks grow to this scale? The world is more dangerous than most people realize. Nuclear weapons exist in quantities sufficient to destroy civilization multiple times over. The barriers that they're spread are maintained by constant vigilance and occasional intervention. In the shadows, Guardians stand watch against those who would make the world more dangerous. They ask for no recognition. They seek no fame. They want only to ensure that nuclear weapons remain in the hands of those committed to never using them. Subscribe to Secret Elite for more stories of heroic interventions that saved lives the world never knew were at risk. Where nuclear threats emerge, Secret Elite is there, stopping proliferation before it can reshape the global balance. The shadows protect us all.